Welcome back to the Bonsai Builders Podcast. I'm your host, Addison Galambos. My guest today is Josh Renaud. Josh is a business owner by day, but he's rapidly making a name for himself as an incredible ceramic artist and a deeply passionate bonsai artist in the LA area. So we're going to talk about his journey, kind of the booming American bonsai ceramics movement, and what it means to safeguard our kind of cultural institutions. So Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's an incredible privilege to be on this one, on your show.
Well, we're still small time here, but I really appreciate you
Not
coming
to
on,
me.
and I think you've got a really interesting perspective to share. So
Thank you. I hope somebody thinks that. I'm glad to hear somebody does. But yeah, I guess it's an interesting story. I just want to contribute something to it.
Yeah. So can you kind of start us off with telling, just a little bit more about yourself in general, and then how what your story is in bonsai and bonsai pottery?
I live in the LA area near Glendale right now, but I was born and raised in Wisconsin. I grew up in a city called La Crosse, Wisconsin, and never liked the cold, and basically moved to Florida as soon as I could on a bus after I turned just before I was 19. Lived there for a long time, and then ended up moving to California, to Santa Cruz, California, about 12 years ago actually now, and then moved to LA a couple years ago. And yeah, I guess you reached out because I do ceramics and bonsai pots and post videos and things on my Instagram. I've always been an artist. I've always been kind of a nerd and into technology, but I really I love also working with people and meeting people and collaborating, and then spent a lot of time outdoors. My mom was a big gardener. My dad, we all went out into the woods a lot, camped a lot. Yeah, and I've been an artist my whole life, and there's just been at various points a convergence of different factors, different interests and passions. And I think especially in the last year, a lot, bonsai and making pots are kind of, and my just the last year or so of my journey and all of that is such a good, I think, example of the convergence of a lot of different things, all those things.
Yeah, it makes sense. So are you more well, first of all, yeah, I that was how I found you, was on Instagram looking at pictures of your cool work, your cool bonsai pots. So I that instantly hooked me, and I was like, all right, I want to talk to this guy about what is it like, breaking into and kind of trailblazing in the bonsai pottery industry in the US. So we'll get to that in a bit, but
yeah.
But I wanted to first, so would you call yourself more of a ceramicist or more of a bonsai hobbyist? Like, which of those two things do you connect with more, or which was first?
Well, I certainly have more skills and experience, I guess. I'm certainly more effective as a ceramic artist than I am as a bonsai artist. However, I actually got into bonsai before I discovered ceramics, really. I mean, when I was a kid, I was big in drawing and painting, and there was always this kind of struggle associated with it, right? Like, I loved comic books and always wanted to be able to produce great paintings and drawings. It's kind of like when you see somebody's tree or somebody's whatever, and you're like, damn, how the hell am I ever going to be able to do something like that? I ended up going back to college after a break in my tech career early on. And part of that was an art minor. I actually went back to school for game production. So I learned at University of Central Florida. I got a degree in digital media game production. A lot of it was to build out my computer science skills, actually. And as part of my art minor, I had to take some art classes, and I basically had to take them in the last semester, and ceramics was one of the only classes that would fit my schedule. And I think it was 35, about to wrap up my degree. I had to take this ceramics class to fill my class load and get into the minors. But I think being that age and having overcome other things and had a career and gone through most of university education, I knew I was going to have to practice a lot. And so I went into it with that mindset and started practicing. And then all of a sudden it just clicked actually pretty quick. And then I was just hooked. And kind of tying it back to like the struggles and the frustration and insecurity of drawing and painting and earlier in my life, it was kind of nice to just have something where it's like, cool, I can make a cool looking mug. I can make a neat goblet, a cool bowl. And when I give it to people, they're just like, wow, this is the coolest thing ever. Thank you so much. And then I go back to their house a year later. It's like they're telling me it's their favorite mug. And just how rewarding is that? You know, it's like ceramics in a big way was the first finding it at that point and wheel turning, just really making pots. And it's a key distinction between just like ceramics and just sort of the fine arts in the Western view anyway versus functional. And I think, you know, I think a lot about the definition of words. And when we talk about pottery or pots, I think there's an implicit function to it. And I love that combination of art and function. And so you could just make like what makes a mug feel good in your hand? What makes it, what do people like about it? And then also make it look cool, you know? And there didn't need to be anything more than that to it. And so it was like really kind of liberating as an artist to find that where I didn't have the pressure of like, oh, how am I gonna do this great thing, right? And I've been going hard in it ever since, and that was 14 years ago. Ceramics, yeah. And
Can you
so it's the
explain a
main
little
thing is
bit
that,
more the can you explain a little bit more the like the struggle that you felt with drawing and painting that
yeah,
I mean, I understand that the functional and the appreciation of the item as like a good item is like
hmm
more objective with pottery. It's like, hey, like yes, this is a functional and good mug, right?
yeah.
But did you have more struggle with like with a drawing or a painting? Like what parts did you not feel were good enough, or what like you weren't connecting with the audience well enough, or
Well, I mean, you know, I was, you know, in my teens, especially during that period, especially I was like really trying to get focused on it, and I loved animation and I loved comics, but also just like some of the masters and contemporary art and everything. I was really lucky with my mom. She was a really great art teacher, still is, of course. She's retired, but you know, you never stop. And you know, to this day, she's one of the best art teachers I've ever had. And we would go to art museums, and so being exposed to all that, and I mean, that's all really great and was super valuable, and it was priceless. But it's that art, you know, comics or it's about what is the concept and how does it look and how does it hit you and is it remarkable, is it great, whatever, like, you know. And I was happy with some of my work, but it was also like I was seeing other artists, and I just felt like, man, how can I get to that level? It seems so
seeing
hard, you
other
know.
artists being like people in museums, I guess. But yeah,
Yeah, well, and
that's definitely a high
comics
standard to
and
be,
seeing
you
it,
know,
well,
yeah.
comic art. I mean, some of the greats of that of the era, like the '90s and everything, and animation, and just wanting to achieve and create that and make my ideas in those mediums real. It's different because I think the lack of the kind of explicit function, especially physical world, it's just something, it's something you look at. And I don't mean just, it's, and that's to say there's not a message or a purpose to it. It's just, it's much more, the concept in a way of it is more abstract in the sense versus like, hey, I'm going to make a cool looking mug, right?
Yeah.
Or a bonsai
Yeah,
pot.
yeah.
But, you know, and in there, you know, actually I came out to SF from Wisconsin right after I graduated high school. It was an uncle up in Marin County, um, and I was looking for education in film and animation was really where I wanted to go. So I took these classes at the San Francisco Art Institute, and on a visit to my uncle's place during July 4th, I think that would have been 31 years ago. We went to the Marin County Fair, and there was the club there at a bonsai display, and I saw this birch stand. You know, it was like a little forest of birch, and we had a lot of paper birch where I grew up, which is in the Mississippi River basin, and I was just like gobsmacked. I was just like, oh my god, that is the coolest thing ever. And while I didn't get into it right then, it really hit me, and I just thought it was so cool, and it really planted the seed for later. And Yeah, so it's kind of this bonsai to ceramics and back and forth thing. It's just in a way, it's sort of in a long period just bobbled that. Like after I moved to Florida, then I got really into bonsai. I came across a book, and then I found a club locally, and I showed up to it one day, and they were actually voting to shut it down because there's like five members. It was called Laubsch Bonsai Club in Safety Harbor, Florida, in the Tampa Bay area. And I'm like, you guys can't shut down. I just got here. And they're like, well, will you help run it? I'm like, yes, absolutely. So, we just kept it going and got really more into it, learning from each other. But it in the early 2000s, it was a really different, I hate to say it, lower level than what it is today, and especially on the West Coast. But yeah, and then I went through it actually brought a lot of meaning to me in that period because I was, I wasn't living my life the right way, I would say. And getting out of that situation and really finding the right path for me and taking my life back in a way was a pretty hard experience that ultimately caused me to lose all my trees. Long story short. So I lost all of my bonsai collection, and that's when I kind of went back to school and started over again in my 30s. And then I always kept little pre bonsai. Once you really got it, like you always kind of have some trees, but I always was just sort of building up to someday. I was moving around a lot, being a renter and everything, and moved up to Santa Cruz. I kept it going on that level, and then when I moved to LA, I started volunteering at the Huntington after going to the Bonsai-thon event just last year, early 2025. And I realized, like, what am I doing? Like, I need to be pushing these trees. I need to be. Also, it was warmer weather, and I like tropicals from Florida, and they just were not happy in Santa Cruz. So I started volunteering there, started learning from Daniel Deephouse and Ray Blasingame there, and it was kind of nice to work on other trees other than my own, you know. So all the while I'd been doing ceramics too, and then I realized again, what am I doing? I need to be making bonsai pots. So I started doing them, and then being around these great pots and great trees, and like, I'm making these kind of artistic or naturalistic pots, and you're really limited to what you can do on the wheel, like round pots. And so you see that a lot of American potters as they're making round pots. And I was like, well, I want to make like real bonsai pots, like proper bonsai pots. And so I started learning from resources on YouTube, like
Stuff like Greg
you
Ceramics or
yeah,
like
Greg
Yuki.
Ceramics. He is an amazing resource. Yukiko Nakano, the Gyosan, people just call him Gyosan. He unfortunately died last year, as I understand it. But in the previous, several years, a lot of people to video him working, and those are on YouTube. And I was just like, okay, picking that up. And then I was speaking about it during a volunteer session or a shift at the Huntington with my friend John Kim, who um, owns and operates Joshua Rock Tools and is a volunteer there. I mean, the resources in the community in LA are just so amazing, right?
Yeah, you
And
guys are
so
stacked. You guys have a
for
powerhouse down
real,
there.
for real. And he mentioned, oh, have you seen the video by Now Takutake? He's a really great potter up in Portland, and I hadn't. And then I saw the GSBF Zoom. There's for people in the outside of the area or whatever, if you don't know, it's Golden State Bonsai Federation is kind of the parent organization or umbrella over a lot of clubs here. So, and they have like a periodic Zoom where they have guests come in and talk or give a presentation. And now gave a really fantastic, like 2 hour lecture about pots, why and how they're built the way they are, why there's a lack of that kind of production in the US. And it's funny, I had just been like, because this convergence of bonsai and ceramics and my focus on it just like my really fueled a ton of creative energy in me. And I've been talking to my wife Stephanie about like I'm trying to put these pieces together. And I'm on the verge of like connecting a lot of things. And I'm excited about it. But I feel like these missing pieces, and about like, yeah, like answer those questions of why aren't you doing this here, and I started piecing it together myself, and then I saw Now's I call it a lecture because it's a really, and I mean that in a good way. It's extremely informative and it's a really great presentation he made. And he knows obviously a ton about it, both on the, Japanese history, the skills of actually building those pots, and then the chemistry of it. And that's the thing about ceramics that's really cool is like there's just tons of science and chemistry. It's really like alchemy, almost like magic. And he knows so much about it and he just puts so much in there. And it was like, this is what I needed to hear. And it just really helped inspire and focus me. Right. I'd love to meet now. I'm sure I will before too long when I get out there to Portland. And anyway, I'd recommend anybody looking at that. So that really helped kind of focus me.
That video is awesome.
Yeah.
I really wanted, I'm glad you've watched it because I wanted to ask you about your impressions on it. So before we move on to that though, I wanted to kind of
Sure.
summarize your journey as I heard it. So
Yeah.
you you saw bonsai in Marin at the county fair. I mean, you had
Yeah.
seen Karate Kid, but you saw it in Marin. You saw this birch forest. It was interesting how you said like, "Hey, it really struck me because it connected to trees that I was familiar with." A whole nother topic, but I think that's interesting. So you found bonsai. You had gotten started in bonsai, but then a life event had happened that
Yeah.
kind of had you
Yeah.
losing your trees and kind of reinventing yourself. As a part of that reinvention in school, in your whenever you went back for your second degree or
No, it's
additional
just my
degrees.
first.
Oh, your
I've
first
I've
degree.
been to
Okay,
like 8 different colleges and universities for credit. I'm going. I randomly took pre-calc a couple years ago for absolutely no reason. I didn't,
just to prove you
just to
could.
just to yeah, I suppose so.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with keeping your
I
brain
think
moving,
that's
right?
important. Yeah, challenge
Yeah.
yourself. That's really a key
And we
theme
wouldn't be
here.
doing bonsai if we didn't want to continue learning.
Right.
So so once you were at school, you
Mhm.
kind of discovered a love for ceramics,
Yeah.
and you started doing ceramics, but not bonsai ceramics, and you were doing bonsai
Okay.
again, and then recently you kind of were like, hey, I should connect these
Yeah.
two,
I
and
mean, I did some pots and planters here and there, but it was all centered around the wheel. And my level of knowledge about bonsai and activity in it was such a much of a lower, just so much lower level, because I just hadn't gotten back into it. And but yeah, I actually was looking at my rack of pots that I have. And there's some, that I made a few years ago. They're all little round ones, or they're training pots or something like that. But yeah.
makes sense. So yeah, I'm curious on your takes, and maybe we can both kind of summarize
Mhm.
now's lecture. My It's been a while since I watched it, but my
Yeah.
TLDR would be something like in Japan, the ceramics industry for bonsai has this pyramidal shape in terms of
Mhm.
what methods are used to produce pots, right? And so at the base of the pyramid, the most volume of bonsai pots are produced by like mold built
Yeah.
techniques, right? And then you kind of go up the stack and you go to like hand build, and then maybe
Mhm.
there's some wheel thrown or like abstract pots as well. So the number of pots produced gets smaller in those various veins as you go up. But he was saying in the US, it's essentially inverted, where most of our pots are kind of like one of a kind, bespoke, more artistic
Sure.
pots created by potters. And we don't have the same volume to support a bonsai industry at like cheap, affordable, or not cheap, but like affordable or like mass produced prices for, you know,
Yeah.
consistent shapes.
Well,
That
I
would be my
think,
like TLDR version, but I'm curious what your
yeah, I mean, I
impression
think he
was.
breaks it into like the economics, the economics behind it, the culture, the cultural
Mm,
elements, and I think if I want to, I'm probably getting this wrong, but like the social and the historic side of it. And there's so much difference in terms of our history of the United States and ceramics production here versus in Asia. Some of that has to do with where the clay deposits are located. Some of it has to do with where did Europeans colonize first. For the most, I mean, it was on the East Coast, right? And the purpose of making the most pottery production at the time was there as storage for like, jugs or tableware or,
mm,
and that's why wheel throwing again is, which is like, is, that that element of ceramics history here was from Europe, right? And so, and the clay deposits on the East Coast or in Appalachia and this in the South and everything, it's really great clay. And that convergence of those things and the need for, vessels to store things and use is really just like everything that has happened in American ceramics in terms of functional wear is kind of an extension of that, and now identified it as, I think very accurately in terms of like it's an extension. It would kind of like currently contemporary ceramics that you see on Instagram a lot are an extension of the arts and crafts movements of the 60s and 70s, where there's kind of a return to that, like the roots of American ceramics. But that's totally different than also, we barely been practicing bonsai here, right? The tradition of that, and like what, there's of course they've been wheel throwing in Asia. They've been using ceramics as vessels for longer, as I understand, than Europeans, a long time before, right? So that's not to take away from that, but there's obviously like the bonsai tradition there is much longer term. And what is inspired? Why is it that we use bonsai pots and prefer bonsai pots that look the way they do, right? There's so many things that go into that. So the convergence of bonsai kind of building here in the US up against our tradition of pottery,
That makes sense. Yeah.
right? Like there's a lack of, so we actually
Like
do
that's what
have,
most people are skilled in, like those specific
exactly.
techniques, and that's
Yeah,
how pottery is typically,
right.
you know,
And I think,
actioned on. Then whenever
yeah,
it connects with bonsai, it's going to, people are
we
going to
kind
take their
of,
skills and they're going to apply it
yeah.
to that, right? Which
Well,
makes sense.
people, I think this is a really common thing in art and everywhere else. Like you go with what's comfortable, right? But if you always just stay with what's easy, and if you just stay with what you're good at, I mean, I don't want to judge anybody or anything, but like, I don't, to me, that's like, you're not reaching your potential, right? I
Mm.
always want to explore and do new things and try to be, I don't want to just, I'm not satisfied making pots that I can just throw on the wheel because I can throw, round pots all day. It's no big deal. I actually need to go back and start doing some round pots too because I just like never get on the wheel. But I can't really say to myself, I'm making great bonsai pots, or if I'm not figuring out how to make rectangles or ovals or mocha pots or lotuses, right? If I'm just doing what I can do already, then I'm putting a ceiling on myself, right? So all of those things, and now's demonst- the presentation and working at the Huntington just sent me on all these rabbit holes because ceramics itself is like bonsai. There's a million different rabbit holes. There's a lot of parallels actually, like
Yeah,
between the two, I think, you
I
know.
agree. Yeah, I agree for sure.
So I think it was great. I think it could also be intimidating. Somebody who's just starting out, I think there are perhaps lower entry points and it can be more accessible than what someone might have as a takeaway from now's
Hmm.
presentation.
So
And again, that's not, no, it's not criticizing it at all. Like it's an amazing presentation, but I'm kind of excited to sort of figure out how to help people get those entry points because I think everybody, it's actually a lot more accessible than people realize. You're not going to be able to make amazing glazed stoneware, big bonsai pots if you're just starting out at home, right? There's
totally,
a ton of
totally.
infrastructure and equipment and skills involved. But there's other types of pots and you can make there's entry points all over the place. And it's a lot like bonsai in that way, right? If you want to
Yeah.
learn bonsai and make a good bonsai, you don't want to start out with a Japanese black pine or something. You want to get like a jade plant and figure it out, or ficus, and start easy and simple. It doesn't have to be super complicated. That's probably a very controversial statement what I just made.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I would start with a bonsai species, but or like I would start with black pine
Really?
or well, it's a little bit of a or juniper, right? Because those are like the classics, and that's what
Well,
the
they're
literature is
they're
out there
awesome.
about.
Yeah.
And you'll have the ability to practice all these techniques, like on a jade. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, a
Yeah.
jade plant, you might not like it'll live and
Sure.
it probably and it's easier to take care of, but you're not going to
Yeah.
get the same you're not going to be able to practice the same techniques,
Yeah.
right, that you can
Well,
on a
and it's
juniper.
the parallels throughout these things in life that it's like you want to lower the bar to entry for entry, right?
Mm,
But
that's
you
true.
also
That's
want
true.
people to understand the challenge before them. I've done a lot of teaching of ceramics, like wheel throwing, right? And it's so hard when you're starting out. It's very humbling. It's very, very humbling. As soon as you get on and you just try to center the clay, the clay is like moving you around and it's terrible. It
Yeah,
looks
yeah.
bad. You just can't do it. It takes hours, multiple sessions. You still can't do it. It's humbling. You feel stupid, right? In a way. But I would tell people, and I saw this as my challenge as a teacher, is getting you to understand the scope of the challenge before you to reach these certain milestones, right? If you go into a pottery class trying to throw and I just want to keep something, that's actually a really bad approach because you're going to end up being like, great, I got a crappy looking ashtray. Or you're going to spend too much, obsessing over one little piece. And really, it's about repetition. It's about building up your skills, about understand. And before you do that, the most important thing is to look at realistically what the challenge is. And I think that's true with bonsai too, and a lot of other things, right? But you also don't want to be like, well, the challenge is you have to make a 24-inch, perfect round or a perfect oval pot
Rectangle.
that's
Yeah.
stoneware and has this beautiful glaze on it. If that's the milestone, then yeah, like nobody would ever do it, and nobody ever
Yeah, there
should
needs to
do
be
it.
some steps in between there and there. Yeah,
Exactly.
I actually went through this exact experience because I started doing pottery just for fun as
Oh
like a
yeah,
side hobby with bonsai. Yeah, I mean, I did it for, I took about a year of classes, I think, and it was super fun. And I made some bonsai pots,
yeah.
but I was very intimidated. This was before I had watched
Hmm.
Now's lecture. So like I hadn't like nobody at the like I just went to a pottery studio near my
Yeah,
house and like took their hand building classes, and I
great.
was like, oh, I heard bonsai is hand building, so I'll try that. And then little did I know, like, hey,
Yeah.
now it's talking about it all being molds. But the problem
Well,
was
and
like
it's not
nobody.
all molds, just for the record. Like, I mean, it does go into that. It's
Mm,
a lot of hand building too. I mean,
sure,
it's
sure.
both really, and they're actually mixed together. It's not just purely like mold. We really need like another 2 hours on Addison, I think, to go down that to talk about that.
Well, so
Yeah,
let's talk about that though. So I guess the challenges that I ran into is like
yeah.
my work did not look very precise, right? It was pretty messy,
Hmm. That's the tough
and
part.
yeah, and nobody at this pottery studio knew anything about bonsai pots.
That's another
So
thing.
the
Yeah,
people teaching me don't know. Like I could show them a picture
exactly.
of a pot, and they're like, "Oh yeah, like
Right,
make 4 walls," and like but they don't know like when do you add the drainage holes, and like when do
right.
you how do you flip it,
Yep,
how do you support it correctly so
right.
it doesn't warp, right, and look all goofy,
Yeah,
So all that
bonsai.
stuff is hard to learn on your own.
Absolutely, bonsai pots are especially challenging because it's a very specific. They have very tight, extremely important specifications in the functional side of it, right? Versus a mug or a bowl, right? Those are very clear cut. As soon as you get into ceramics where it's like much more tight, like requirements, important specifications, say making a teapot, right? Making a bonsai pot, making a complex jar or something. Once you get the functional requirements elevated, all it's like a multiplier of how difficult it can be, right? Because there's just like, you know, there's a million ways for it to go wrong, and you have to learn the hard way a lot of it. And that's kind of the part of the struggle. To your point, is like there's just not a lot of other bonsai pot artists out there to learn from, and it's such a physical hands-on thing. It's really good to have in person. I'm lucky that one of my fellow volunteers and good friend by the name of Bill Stanton, he I don't think posts any of his pots, and we talk we could talk all day about pottery, and he makes big pots and he's figuring it out too. And so it's really exciting to learn from him, and I he learns from what I'm doing, and we share resources and everything. But like, yeah, it's also just like be great if there were more people. So but that's where the internet has been good. I'm not collaborating, learning from other artists online. I'm going to do ceramics retreat in Spain with a fellow by the name of Nick Hopes, runs Maidenhair Ceramics. His Instagram is a bonsai Brit in Spain, I think, with underscores between. And then he does these retreats where you just collaborate on pots and everything. He makes really amazing pots. You guys check him out. And there's another guy going out, David Fletcher of Five Twigs, I think is his Instagram, from Colorado. And so we're going to be collaborating on pots, and I can't wait to learn from them in person. But in the meantime, like we exchange WhatsApp messages and share our techniques, and I complain about warping problems, just generally the main challenge in trying to make these kinds of pots that are especially larger is addressing warping. There's less of a concern, less of a problem with wheel throwing, just because the way the chemistry and the process of clay and getting it through the process. So it's been super valuable. But like
So this
sometimes you
retreat
just got to
sounds,
you're on your own and you got to figure it out and you got to keep going. And it's actually
yeah,
really hard.
yeah,
Most of my pots turn out like complete ass. So everybody asking me to buy my pots and everything, I'm like, there's a reason you don't see them finished. And there's other reasons, like I just don't get around to photographing or sharing the finished pieces. But like the value in them for me right now is, okay, what did I learn
the
from
learning
this? Because most
process.
of the
Yeah.
time they don't turn out. A lot of times it's like, I don't know what went wrong. I don't know what I did wrong. And that's when I message Nick
Yeah.
and
Hey, why
David. I'm
did this
like,
happen?
guys, yeah, help me out here. Like, what am I doing wrong? And they've been huge. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be awesome to see like a U.S. training program for or some kind of association of potters, hopefully in our lifetime,
Yeah,
that
I
gets formed that really helps kind of steward bonsai
yeah,
pottery in the U.S.
I think, I you mentioned it's booming here. I think that we have more to do, but yeah, there's a lot of other artists doing it now. I think back to Now's thing, I think one of the things he kind of put out is sort of, I took it as like, he's kind of saying, hey, everybody in the US, this is the bar up here, and we've been ignoring it. So let's go for it, right? Like, rise to the challenge. Let's start building this culture here. A lot of it kind of has to be regional. It's best regional because the bigger pots, they're so difficult to ship. They're expensive, right? It's better to have a lot spread out, and you've got, the sort of innovative spirit and the independent, drive and artistry that I think is a strength in the United States. I just see it as like, wow, okay, like he kind of laid it out for us. Let's go for it. And so that was just really energizing to me. But there's a lot of other artists here too. There's the North American Bonsai Pot competition. I think that was last year.
Yep, at nationals, yeah, that was very
Yeah,
cool.
so cool. There's a contest. They've added a pot category to showing pot category to the U.S. National Tropical Bonsai Exhibition, the first one. I'm actually working. I'm like crushing on these like Shohin pots. I'm just trying to bust out as many as I can so I can enter a few. And my goal is just to, if I can get in to it, I don't anticipate winning or anything like that. I don't need to. I just would love to be able to, like, I set that as the milestone, is like, can I get some pots, even just one, entered into this and accepted in so I can have it on display
Oh,
there.
that would be so cool.
So
Yeah,
good.
that's a great barometer, and
But there's
yeah,
also a lot
definitely
of
helps you
pressure.
push yourself. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
That's the
that's
sort
like you
of
were
getting back
saying.
to,
If
yeah,
you're not challenging yourself, then
absolutely.
you know.
But it gets back to what I was saying earlier about, like, and this has been something I've had to reconcile with this energy. And it started before I got really focused on bonsai pots, of like being around other great ceramic artists and be like, okay, what am I doing? Am I just making cool mugs, right? That people like, so I can, that's awesome. I love that. But like, I have these ideas, and as I've gotten more experience and more sophisticated in my work, I'm getting back to that artist spirit where I have really great concepts and ideas that I want to make real. And I see other artists that are really great. And there's that voice of like comparing myself to them. But just through the experience of my life and the wisdom and everything like that, I've been much more productive in reconciling that. And but saying, oh, I'm going to enter a contest, I found it like kind of triggering some of that old,
Mm.
you know, comparing, like, am I good enough? Like, how do I is it ever going to be good enough? You know what I mean? But again, I now have the tools inside of me to I think, properly address that. Although, we all have our low points, and I get something out of the kiln that I thought was going to be great,
Totally.
and it's all warped and like, oh, I
Yeah.
can't do
Well, I
this.
mean, hopefully, I think the antithesis of that is, or the
Yeah,
the cure for that is like, hopefully you're progressing each time, right? And you can see
absolutely.
and validate that progression, and then it's like, as long as you're moving forward, it's easier to think like, okay, I'm not
Yeah,
there yet, but I
definitely.
can I can, as
It's
long
not a
as
straight
you haven't hit a
line.
wall, yeah.
It's not,
Yeah.
growth is definitely not a straight line in this because of the trial and error, because each one takes so long. It takes,
Yep.
4 to 6 plus weeks from the start of a pot, really from the start of a pot to where you're done out of the second firing. It's a two-stage firing. You make it, you have to dry it. The bigger it is, you have to dry it for longer. I mean, at a big pot has to be dried for at least a month, right? And then you fire it the first time, then you can glaze it and decorate, do additional decoration, and then you fire it again at an extreme high temperature that the clay almost melts, and that's how it becomes stoneware. All the holes and the air get pushed out of it, but that's also when the clay starts relaxing into its old memory of forms and bending and everything that you did earlier, and then all of a sudden it's comes out warped. It's not sitting right. The water won't flow out the holes correctly. All kinds of, or just looks like crap. There's that one too, and it's a lot of disappointing and heartbreak. But that's anybody who's been doing ceramics a while. It's sort of like a lesson in not getting attached in a way.
Yeah.
But you have to look at like, what did I learn from this? And that's the real value of the pots for me. I mean, I've only, since I've really started going hard more in the traditional pot, trying to learn those skills, just fundamentals. I mean, I've only made like 12, 15 of them, right? That's only been in the last 6 months, 7 months that I really started focusing on that. So I'm still early on in that respect, even though I've been doing ceramics for over 14 years now.
Yeah.
It's a lot of new territory. But yeah, you take that frustration, you try to you remind yourself the value. It's just like when I'm teaching my students, back when I was teaching, don't worry about what it looks like. Don't worry about keeping that cup. Make 10 of them, make 100 of them, right? Every single one you're learning. It's about learning the challenge, getting the skills, little incrementally learning from each mistake, learning from everything that doesn't work out. And over the years and over the attempts and years of doing that, you become really good at it, right? And the same is true with bonsai. So I mean, it's a fun journey. It's painful. It's full of joy. It's exciting, right? I find so much meaning in it. Just like, gosh, what a metaphor for life. And it's exactly like bonsai. Bonsai is that way. People are like, I can't grow plants, I'll kill it. I'm like, man, I'm still killing trees. We all still kill trees. I don't like to admit it, but like, it's just part of it. You learn and you move on. You don't
Yep.
settle into
Totally.
what's easy. I mean, you
Makes
can, I
sense.
guess, but
And I think that's a way to, that's an attitude that helps you push yourself and accomplish
yeah.
big things. So tell me about Spain. You're going to go to
Yeah.
a retreat to learn ceramics there? That sounds awesome.
Yeah. No, I heard about this on some other, I think it might even, was it Black Pondo or one of them? I can't remember her name. The lady who was running the North American Ceramics Bonsai pot competition did an interview with him. I think she went out. Maybe it was in March. Maybe it was last year. She went out to Spain and did this. I'm not sure how active she is in ceramics or just an enjoyer of it. I guess during that retreat, she was active. Anyway, she had a conversation with Nick. He has this like vacation property that he rents out and I think lives on site. And during the off season, he runs these couple retreats a year. And then right after that, I saw, because I had already followed him on Instagram, he posted something about how there was an opening. And I'm like, oh, damn, checked in with my wife. I'm like, are you cool with maybe gone for 2 weeks? And listen, by the way, you should absolutely come. But she's also working on her thesis and for grad school. And so, yeah, I'm going out and I just can't express how grateful I am for my wife. She's like a lot of the bonsai spouses out there. They water while we're gone, and they hopefully appreciate and encourage our passion, all these different things. She's been great. So yeah, she's staying behind. I'm gonna go make pots with these guys, and I'm really stoked.
That's so awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like it's going to be an awesome, like kickstart to even developing more quickly, right? Which is
for
great.
sure. Yeah,
That kind of meeting of the minds and
yeah.
getting to lean on their expertise
But
and what they've already kind of done through trial and error.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I really wanted to make sure we talk about too is kind of getting back to like starting over again. And we talked about this, ahead of the interview here that, bonsai training and having that gap and like I think in a lot of learning a lot of things over the long term, there's this sort of conventional thinking of like it's a sort of steady, straight line. And of course, it's not, especially with bonsai, but bonsai is so dependent on space and sunlight and resources in order to do it right. And I've seen a lot of other bonsai enthusiasts or artists have these events that are traumatic or life changing, and all of a sudden they lose everything. There's some, kind of famous stories out there and some of the pros enduring that. And recently, last year and a half ago, when the Eaton fire near the Huntington, it actually happened. Some of the volunteers there that I've become friends with, they lost all of their trees. And these are enthusiasts who've been doing it for decades. They lost their houses burned down. The trees are obviously a distant second to all that, probably, but like and so I think it's a not an uncommon experience of like being really into it, having that level of commitment. We all know it's a lifestyle, and then losing everything and deciding like, am I really gonna get back into this, right? And then when you do, especially if it's a long gap like mine, where I was just operating at such a lower level, and the resources around me at the time were just at a much lower level of like, okay, how do I get back into this and train? I don't have a lot of great trees yet. And I mean, I'm getting a lot more material now, but when I started, I kind of was like, okay, I'm not exactly a beginner. There's only so much I can get out of the like volunteer shifts because I'm kind of doing a job there. But there seemed to be kind of a lack of training. And then I heard more about intensives and started doing a couple workshops here and there and just kind of starting over in that way. And as a beginner because I don't have anything to show for myself and my knowledge was very spotty. So I think the biggest there's a local artist here who's fantastic, Michael Roberts. Doesn't get enough attention. He's a really great mentor and teacher here locally. He does workshops at Robert Pressler's place, Kimura Bonsai. But really getting the next level. And also, I got to give a shout out to my friend Bill Ward. He's taught me a lot, just working with him, and we're a lot alike in that we like to find nursery stock and turn them into trees and everything. But really, the biggest step for me was when I heard about Boone's intensives up in Sacramento. So I went and did that recently, and it was really great. It was extremely humbling, but it was really great. And so I think if there's people out there that have had that experience or like how do you get back into it, or maybe you've been doing it on solo and then it's like, well, maybe I feel like I'm hitting the ceiling or I would love to learn, but I don't want to just like go into these workshops where it's like, okay, they're taking a template like you're like everybody is a first time beginner, and it's kind of a waste of time and money. And I don't have a clear answer, but I would just say like we're so lucky to have the resources like Boone, and I'm I was able to do one with Julian recently, Julian Sai here in LA, and join his group, and that's been super just elevating in my skills and learning so much. I think the issue that like part of the difficulty is like a lot of it is like bring your own tree workshops, and I was felt like, well, what if I don't have a tree, what if I don't, then I'm limited by the material I have. And number one, I kind of get over that because even if you bring just what you have or if you find some nursery stock and just bring it, there's the like again like, is this worth bringing? Just bring it, just bring it. If you're doubting, and not you, Addison, of course, but people who are listening, like if you're doubting or
No, I
you
think
don't
this
think
is
it's
a
good
really
enough,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, you don't think it's good enough, you're not going to get it, it's not worth doing the work, just bring it. Bring your stupid little seedling, bring your whatever, and you're not going to be judged. People are super supportive. All these different people, like I brought some trees that were not in great shape to Julian, and Julian's just a phenomenal talent. And I was like, man, I'm like like the biggest amateur bringing, and he spent so much time with me, and you get honest feedback and honest assessment. Like, yeah, this isn't going to be. And the same with Jonas. I did a workshop with him the other day. Like, they're honest with you, but it's also like you're not judged or put down or less. Like they look at the tree and is like, this is, the roots or whatever. They're not, it's never going to be that like prize winning tree, but that doesn't mean it's not worthwhile. I mean, all of them can be learned from and they can be fun and they don't have to follow the normal model. And I was really, I guess I've been pleasantly surprised that some of these folks that are, trained in Japan or professionals or more known for more quote unquote traditional bonsai. I don't, people come to talk about rules or whatever, guidelines or philosophy, value systems, whatever you want to talk about it. It's actually, they've all been much more like fluid and creative and encouraging, and even with some crappy materials. So just bring it and just keep going. Build the relationships too. Is like building the relationships is just so
Totally. Yep.
rewarding. And but there's
And I
also
like
the
that
like, you don't want to be
advice. So
constrained by your materials. So it's good. There's opportunities to work on other people's material too, like
yeah.
Boone's and Julian's.
Yeah. So sounds like to me, I mean, I think this is really, I think there's definitely like a category of people who have gone through those kind of catastrophic experiences, like you mentioned, where their collections are, you know, a bunch of trees die
Hmm.
or they lose their collection or whatever, right? And I can totally see that. I haven't had that happen, but like it's just like, oh, you've had a dog for a long time and
Yeah.
then, the dog passes away and like, that's a lifestyle that you've been living of like, oh, I have to, walk the dog 3 times a day or like these things, right? And
Yeah.
so there's always that question of similar with bonsai is like, do I want to constrain myself again, right? And
Hmm.
it
Yep.
sounds like you're advocating for like put yourself out there and go work on other people's trees
Yeah.
if you want to see if you still have that spark, right? Like
Yeah.
go take these lessons with people who are experts and start building a
Yeah.
community. And then you have the optionality of like jumping back into it fully or not, but at least you're still like nurturing that passion and
Yeah.
finding
I
out if it's
think
for you.
getting back into the community, getting into the community. If you're starting out as a beginner, go to a club meeting, find the club, meet other people, volunteer. I mean, there's a collective nature to this, especially when, even though, yeah, bonsai in the US has been going, I think, almost 100 years now on some level, but it's a slow build and there's ups and downs. But it's still spread out. It's still not, I mean, it's probably like what, less than 1% of the people would ever even think about doing bonsai in the US. That's just completely pulled out of thin
Yeah.
air. I'm just like, it's pretty rare, unusual that you find somebody into it who's actually doing it. Right. So, and like ceramics, nobody can really do it at a high level on their own because it's a lot of infrastructure, a lot of resources. You need that kind of like collective contribution. It's a community, right? So you have to get involved in the community. And I think we do need more resources where thing options where it's not just bring your own tree, right? We actually had a good little conversation with Jonas about this in the workshop the other day because he was noting that a lot of, he's got a nice, pool or, group of volunteers and students at his place in Alameda. And he kind of remarked about the phenomenon of younger people in a bonsai or people that he's meeting more lately who are kind of coming into it and getting more serious about it, who don't have trees or don't even necessarily want trees. I can kind of speak to that because like when I joined the hunting team, it was like, cool, I can just work on all these amazing trees and then I can go home and I don't have to worry about, or I can travel and not worry about who's going to water them. Right.
Yep.
Of
Yep.
course that didn't last because I started getting more of my trees on my own and then but like I pointed out, like especially on the West Coast in California, the housing situation, you can't prioritize
Exactly. Yep.
sunny place with
Yep.
good water and enough space. You gotta prioritize a lot of other things way above that. So it just makes it really difficult. And I think that's a thing that's stifling a lot of activity in bonsai, right? Also, there's just a certain amount of, maybe I just love this art and I want to learn more about it. And if I'm constrained with whatever like couple little low level trees I have, then that there's a lot to learn from that, but there's a lot more to learn too for those opportunities. That's what I love about going to Boone's is he has a lot of different plants at all different stages. It's all amazing material, of course, because he's the man. But that was the main driver of doing it too, is not just to learn with him, but also like not being constrained with the trees that I have. Right. And I think we need more of that. And Jonas is doing that too. I think he was really stressing, but it's really important to have your own trees too. And I totally agree. I think there is a lot of value in legitimacy and just learning the art, and that can be done on other
Yeah.
people's trees. So that is,
Yeah.
I think I would encourage the people who are into it, who are teachers, who are professionals, don't devalue that. Like it's easy to lose sight of, they think of the, like, how difficult and the resource of having your own trees when you probably have a ton of them at a higher level and you have a ton of different material at different stages. And I mean, I have a bunch of material now. I've probably up to 40, 50 trees in the pipeline, which isn't even that much, although when I say it, it sounds like a lot. If you are teaching, if you are mentoring, if you're sharing your knowledge, think of and be willing to, like, have people at different levels work on your trees as that way. And don't, I I want to see more of that in the community at large, not just bring your own tree. Those are great too. There's also great workshops where you get material out of the workshop. Those are really good too. Like the boxwood workshop I did with Michael Roberts. Those are fantastic because then you get both. Like, you don't have to bring the
Yeah.
material and you get a tree to take home and you get that experience. There's a lot of value in working on other people's trees. I really want to see more of that.
100%. Well, I think it's really appealing for younger people who maybe don't have the space or the money or the time to care
Hmm.
for their own collection. It's like all the skills that you build working on other people's trees are going to be just as applicable on your trees
Absolutely.
in the future,
Yeah,
right? And so you might actually get to a nice
totally.
tree faster by
Oh, for
learning on somebody else's
sure.
trees and
For
then
sure.
buying a nice tree down the road and then like shaping that into a bonsai. So
Yeah.
it's not even a guarantee that having your own collection is going to get you there faster, right? But
No, no. I
it's
have
all
to
about the number
learn.
of at bats you can get.
Yeah, the complicated. I mean, getting into pines, black pine recently. I mean, I'm not the fastest learner on things that are complicated, maybe just like aren't super intuitive. And as we all know, when we get into bonsai and scratch below the surface, it's like there's a lot of stuff that is not intuitive, right?
Yep.
And
Yeah.
taking care of pines and doing it right is pretty kind of complicated in a way if you're just looking at it just as like, oh, I like
It
to
was
grow
the least
plants.
intuitive
Yeah.
like thing on the surface for me,
And it's
at
there's a
least.
lot to
Yeah.
it and a lot to remember of when and what and why. And I need repetition of that. So we did a full day of that. Well, I did some needle thinning at the Huntington, and then we did a full day of working on pines at Boone's and wiring part of that, and then I we focused on that for a few hours at Julian's, and then a week later just last Friday I did the Black Pine workshop with Jonas, and I feel like, okay, some of this is actually starting to
Now
stick.
you're starting to
If
yeah, get it.
if
Yeah.
this was restricted to, like, okay, I have some crappy little pine nursery stock, then that, what, 4 months? I mean, really, just with starting with Boone's, where it really got more like really actually being trained in it, that was a month ago. So that was years of maybe I might learn some of this stuff. But even if it was like bringing it in and restricting to my trees and their timeline, that was years of knowledge and training condensed into a month. And it really just a few days spread out in this month. Right. So,
Yep. Yep.
yeah,
Ultra valuable.
working on other people's trees like that with experts or with people who know a lot, repetition, it gives you that ability to have that repetition that helps learn it and helps people retain it. I know that's important for me to learn
Totally.
something.
Totally. Yeah. And there's a lot of really credentialed like there obviously there's more room for professionals in the US, but there's a lot of really credentialed people throughout the US that you can go to and get that kind of
Yes.
advanced level of
Yeah.
learning from, and they're all in the US, at least like almost all these people have business models that
Hmm.
rely on teaching people about
Yeah.
bonsai, so they're able to tailor the content to you wherever you're at, right?
Yep.
So
And they do. It might not
yeah,
seem like they will, or you worry they won't. If you look at, if the people out there, if you're looking to, what do I do, or you're intimidated by it, like, just do it, and you're gonna see that people are a lot more open and helpful than you might think, and
totally.
flexible.
Well, I mean,
Right.
yeah, and that's their business model, so they
Right.
have to, or
Right.
they're not going to be successful, right? So
Yeah.
makes sense. Cool. Yeah, I wanted to On the pottery topic, I wanted to kind of
Hmm.
round out with like, what were your? It sounded like watching the Now lecture was
Yeah.
inspirational for you, but like, what were the specific things that you took out of it that have changed your practice? And then,
Yeah.
what do you think other ceramicists in a similar position to you, like, what should they be doing to
Hmm.
get better at building bonsai pots?
Great question. His bit about the clay chemistry and why, and the types of clay, you know, a lot of us in ceramics, even those of us that have been doing, and there's a lot of people who have been doing a lot longer than me. You just the chemistry is in it, and the science of it is a huge part of it, and you sort of learn bits and pieces, but it's also very extremely complicated. My uncle up in Marin was a organic chemistry professor, and I asked him, so why is it that metal oxides produce these different colors, like cobalt oxide or cobalt or carbonates, cobalt carbonate. They produce blue, and chromium oxides like a light green, and copper carbonate is sometimes red and sometimes it's green, depending on the chemistry of the firing. What is it about metal oxides and carbonates that produce colors versus other chemicals? Why is this? I see this over and over. And he just looked at me, and he was a lifelong teacher, he's a great teacher, and he loves explaining stuff. And he looked at me and was just like, it's complicated. And I'm like, all right, I'll take that. I think so now's presentation about the clay itself that we use, clay bodies is what we call it. Like, so
Mm,
the clay you use to make something out, or you make your piece is called a clay body.
yep.
And what is it about the clay bodies that are so unique or iconic for in Japanese and Chinese pots? What is up with the clay here? Right. I think having some of that knowledge of having mixed clay and glazes and everything, understood just a little bit of it. And he was presenting it to people at the like kind of the lowest common denominator in sense that like people who don't know anything about ceramics and now is presenting to them. But I was able to see that, well, you can take clay that we have here in LA. Actually, a huge clay deposit is really close by, but it's clay that doesn't vitrify when you fire it, right? It's called refractory clay. It's used a lot for pipes and bricks and shingles, roof shingles. It goes back, those the Spanish were mining it, and that was what they used it for. And it's not great out of the ground for making pots that need to be stoneware and vitrify or get close to melting at the highest temperature, because it's how it becomes stoneware. If it doesn't vitrify, it becomes stoneware. It's porous, water soaks in. If you get a freeze, the pot will crack, right? So planters, generally, we don't have much of a freezing problem right here, but like you want to make pots that are usable anywhere,
Yeah,
right?
you
So
want your pots to be usable. Yeah.
yeah, so if you're making bonsai pots, you you need to make them stoneware. But so but we can take the clay that we've got here, which is really actually great, unique, interesting clay. And once you understand the chemistry just a little bit, right? What the different elements of a clay body are. It's not just the actual thing we would call clay. It's other things too that then give it properties or colors or whatever at a certain temperature and other factors. So you can add things to it, a feldspar like flux or other feldspar is one or others, to make it so that clay is vitrifying at the temperature you need it to where the glaze
Mm.
is formulated and it's
So
going
you're
to
making your
look
own
good.
blends. Yeah.
Yeah, and a really cool experience. Him talking about that, and mentioning, oh, there's maps of clay deposits all over. I'm like, cool. I never really wanted to do wild clay collecting or like formulate my own clay, but I really love the idea of that, like provenance and story behind it, and like, how do we make like bonsai pots that are really from here, that are using our clay and not just like factory made stuff. And so I did all of this like calling around and to clay mines and companies. And they're all like, this is not that kind of clay. And our minimum order is 5 tons. And I'm like, okay, can I come with a bucket or two? Right. But I found this one, I started working people on social media, and I found the company that runs the mine on that huge clay deposit east of here, Pacific Clay Company, and they were nice enough to be like, yeah, man, come on by, come on by with some buckets. We'd love to show you around. So I show up one day. I think my team at my company too. My company is named Rootmark. We're a digital agency. We mostly do marketing stuff. My team is so good, and like sometimes I feel it's like, oh, I'm taking the day to go dig clay, guys. Thank you. Right? I swear I'm working too, and they're amazing. And I showed up, and one of the guys there was like driving me around, and we're filling up buckets. I still have the buckets in my garage, and it's on the to-do list to, he gave me all this other like what happens when you fire at different temperatures, and he processed it for me in their big machine, so it's all ready to go. And so I've got all the other ingredients I need to like formulate proper clay
Oh, that's
bodies
so
out of
cool.
local clay here. I know Now's done a lot of that with some clay he got. I This is just what I heard up in Northern California. I
Yep.
And it's so exciting to me. I think it's just, again, he's really pioneering this
This
thing,
field. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
in the United States at this moment, and I'm excited to be a part of it. And so yeah, I've got, after my little wave of Shohin pots, I'm gonna start making some test samples and formulations to figure out how to make our clay here. And that clay deposit has like several different colors and types of clay right there, right out of the ground. And so I've got buckets ready to go, and I run some tests and then figure out how to, just make, I'm going to make clay body out of that, and start making some really
Yeah. Yeah. That would
exclusive
be
small
awesome
run pots
to.
here. Yeah.
That would be awesome to kind of publish those findings too, so people
Absolutely.
can
And I
learn from it.
really love sharing all of my knowledge, and I love teaching. And, I just launched my website again. It's Josheramics.com. And I want to start adding information there about showing what I've learned. And I just find it so exciting. And, I don't like hiding information, or keeping that as my own, like it's some secret. I've learned from everybody around me, and there's a lot I've learned myself, and I'm just really excited to share all that. It's just I've got a lot in it, and it's it takes time to put it out there, but I really want to
Oh, for
start.
sure. Yeah.
My videos are really short on Instagram because I want to just like slam as much information in there, just like to make a cool, appealing video that's neat, and the response has been amazing. But I also want to, I feel like they're not as valuable resources, and maybe also gives the people a different impression. I've realized that
Yeah. I
I'm
think.
making
I
finished
think.
pots when I'm not. I'm just kind of like, that's just the first part. And yeah, so it's about the lessons I'm learning, not the finished pots. And I want to put more resources out there, what I've learned, including taking wild clay of different kinds, and what are the properties that are good for making slab built or molded pots. When you talk about
Yeah.
molded pots,
Yeah.
by the way, generally we're talking about, like, traditionally we're talking about press molds. Most molded pots these days that are like manufactured are using slip casting, which is a much more efficient, like factory style production method. But really great pots like the ones now is making, the traditional like high end pots in Japan. Most of those, if you're talking about molded, are actually using a technique called press molds, and those are a blend of hand building, because you're taking slabs and pressing them into the concave of the mold, and then it's not like you're just pouring in slip and then
Yeah. You still have to do
pouring it
all the
out.
finishing. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, sharing all that. I just made my first press mold a month ago and tried it
Oh,
out.
cool.
That was really, like, that video absolutely exploded. I didn't even know. I think it's up to 5.5 million views now, and I'm like,
Oh,
this.
that's wild.
This was a mold I made from a shower stool that I got at Daiso. I was like, hey, that looks like kind of like a pot. If you flip it upside down and cut it down, and so I wanted to
Oh,
get
that's
in
so
plaster
funny.
mold making, so I made a mold of that, and you just press slabs into it. It didn't turn out awesome, actually. I just got it out of the kiln. It's okay, I suppose, but I learned a lot from that, and I want to go to the next level, make a multi-stage or multi-part press mold.
That's cool. It
Yeah,
would be sweet to do another podcast episode once you have some kind of
I'd love
finding.
to be able to do a follow-up and check in, and once I got more resources out there. And I'm also like getting into like figuring out glaze chemistry. It's really helped push my ceramics practice, because
Mm.
Bonsai pots are very specific and very high end and demanding to do them at a higher level. It's not just like making an awesome mug. And actually, I owe a few people some mugs consequently. So I got to start making a few. But yeah, I'd love to share
So,
more as I learn and yeah.
based on your research and journey so far, like, what would you recommend to you before you started down this bonsai journey? Like, as a ceramicist, what
Yeah.
what what technique should they try tomorrow, or like what
Yeah.
experiment should they be doing at home?
Don't feel you have to make learn on the wheel. That's how so many people get into ceramics because that's the American tradition. Again, coming out of the arts and crafts movement, wheel throwing is seen as this sort of high.
The standard, yeah.
It's like better than hand building, quote unquote. And hand building is sort of almost like a such a broad term, and it's I don't think maybe people mean it to be, but it's often as a sort of like less than because when you're throwing, it looks like a magic trick. It's so cool. And when you get decent at it and comfortable at it, it's fun. It's fun. I could throw 50 cups in a day and it's fun. I just love cranking them out. But like those aren't how you make great bonsai pots. Again, you can make great bonsai pots, but there's only certain styles. I mean, how many round bonsai pots do you need? Do you have, right? Most of them are going to be rectangular, ovals, or other oblong shapes. So forget getting the ceramics in the wheel. Don't bother taking a throwing class. That's its own rabbit hole that you don't need to go down. And it takes a while to learn. I'm gonna do a demo at our club here by Cohen here in LA next year. And I'm developing like what I'm gonna do there. And I wanna there are if you don't care about your pot breaking in the freeze, right? Number one. So you don't have freezing, or if you just bring it in, there's stuff called air dry clay. Now this is as basic like elementary school or even beginner than that. Really, like this is not awesome clay. This is not quote unquote proper clay. But you can take air dry clay, make a pinch pot, put a hole in it, put some feet on it. You got a little accent pot, right? Roll it out in a slab. Learn slab building, right? It's there's a lot. Even though that is just like starting to learn the basics of like when how dry does it need to be? How firm does it need to join them? How do I join two pieces of clay that are not super soft where it's not going to crack? Right? You don't have to worry about the firing at that point. Quickly, you're going to hit a wall. Those are not going to be great pots, but you could plant stuff in them. Just don't let them freeze. And you can start that easily, right? Go take a class. I would say take one in hand building, right? Look at resources. I think one thing that I might differ from now what he was saying in his video, and again, this is kind of like explaining the real challenge that he was doing, and I totally respect it. And it's there are certain difficulties or walls that you can hit or ceiling if you're working in a shared studio because of the types of firings they usually do or whatever. I think that that is partly true, but shouldn't hold people back, right? Like yeah, if you're looking to make a 24-inch rectangle that looks awesome and perfect, a shared studio is going to be a really tough place to do that because you're not loading the kiln. You're not doing the firings like right. I think one thing you mentioned is that most shared kiln or studios are doing like just lower temp electric, like what are called mid range, like and not doing reduction firings. I've actually the studio I'm working on is does high fire reduction
Hmm.
firings. Google
Oh,
what
that's
reduction
nice.
firings means, everybody. I'm not going to go on that, but it's just basically the chemistry of the atmosphere when you fire it. And all of the studios I've been a part of since I learned ceramics, with exception of one like a 2 year period in Jacksonville, I've always been part of studios that had gas kilns.
Oh,
So
really?
I think there is a lot more out there than what somebody who's just hearing about it might think. Not that that's the way to
That's
go,
good to
because
know.
those introduce new challenges that maybe you don't need if you're starting out. But I would say like there is some stuff you can do at home just to like play with the clay and make a functional pot that's essentially like terracotta. And then find a hand building class, find another if you know somebody in your family or a friend who does ceramics. That's a lot more common, right? You can maybe see if you can check out that place, maybe start messing around with it. Get access to a
Totally.
kiln. and just start going on it. But understand it's a long journey and it's a lot of work, and you can go as far as you want with it, but you might find quickly where it's like, oh yeah, this is like, okay, cool. It'd be nice to learn the guitar, but to like get really good at it, am I really willing to like put the energy and time and resource and everything to doing it? Maybe not. It's worth trying it though. I like just trying stuff out and just see, oh yeah, what is this about? Oh yeah, no, I don't actually want to do all that. Okay, but it was cool to learn more about it.
Yeah, yeah. I had a lot of fun just doing it for a year. I think the thing, I was actually having a lot of fun. So, kind of rounding it out, I want to
Yeah.
hear like if you could make like, are there any trees or exhibitions that you'd want your pots to be in that are kind of like a dream for you? Anything like that you want to speak into
Yeah.
the universe? Like, do you want
I
your pot in the Pacific Bonsai Museum or
Well, of
whatever?
course, all of that, right? Like I'm working on a lot of trees here, and I've got some exciting things coming in terms of bonsai. But my goal is not make pots to sell. Not right now. That'd be cool to maybe pivot to that in a sort of quasi retirement. But what I really want to do, and I'm connected with so many great bonsai artists now, and I'm just so admiring of their work, seeing them at the Huntington. That would be like, I want to see great trees in my pots, and I have to make pots that are what people want to use for that. So I'm just trying to build up my skills in that. And then, yeah, like the dream would be like, oh, in the Huntington, a tree is in my pot, or at the Pacific Bonsai Museum, or in somebody's collection, or I think that is a really big goal. I want to just start getting, keep getting my name out there, keep connecting with people, keep all of that just drives me to reach a better level of pods and really contribute to the culture that's growing here. And that means entering my pots into competitions, and maybe, I don't know, PBE. Forgot to ask Jonas that if there was going to be a pot category for that. I think
Oh, that's a good question.
the
Yeah, I don't know. They haven't
nationals.
announced it yet.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be cool to have like, I I'm not really competitive in that way. I think by choice. I don't want to like, yeah,
Put that
I'm
pressure on
not,
yourself, right?
yeah, and I'm not at that level that I want to be at yet. So I would love to see people who are really making great trees using my pots. That's just so cool, right? It's like when I go to somebody's house, family members or a friend from a long time ago, and I go to their house and I haven't seen them for several years, and I open up the cupboard to get a glass for water, and I see a mug that I made 10 plus years ago sitting right there, and I forgot all about it. I'm like, oh man, I remember that thing. And they're like, oh yeah, I love that. I'm like, oh, that's so good. That is so rewarding. And I really want that experience with my
With
pods. So I
bonsai
want to see
pots.
other
Yeah.
people using my pods. And people have messaged me saying, "Oh, your pots, I'm sure, are good enough. Just, can I'd love to buy one, or can you do commission?" And it's like, I really appreciate that. They're not necessarily wrong, and I am sort of working on some commissions on the side a little bit long term. But one thing I think, or people are like being supportive and be like, "Oh, you're being too hard on yourself. You're selling sort of too short." And it's not even just that their heart is in the right place. It's so kind and supportive, and it's just been amazing, that warmth and support. But there is a certain amount of like, I have this vision and I have this process, and if a pod isn't good enough or doesn't meet these things, then
You
that's
don't want
that's
your name
real.
attached to
That's,
it, or
well, it's not
yeah.
even that. It's like, that's real, right? It's like, it doesn't reach my vision. My vision is important, but it's a stepping on stone on that. It's a good lesson. I think if there's anything I can say just at large, it's like, people who, when you're appreciating somebody's art, respect the journey that they're on for themselves. Don't assume that just because they're just being their quote own worst critic, or you're selling yourself short, right? Of course there's some of that too, but there's a balance, right? And I think, let them do the journey. And if they don't feel it's good enough, then encourage them to learn from it and keep going. Not, oh, it's good enough, right? That quickly kind of becomes dismissive and almost like you're making excuses, and that's not going to help them reach the level that they want to go on. So I think, to if you want to support artists, if you want to support especially bonsai pot makers like me, or anybody else who's trying to make really good pots, encourage their practice, encourage them to keep going, encourage them to persevere. encourage them to bounce back after they fail, because most of this is failure. Most of the time, my pots are not at the level I would call even decent, much less good, much less great. I maybe made one pot I'd say is pretty good. The rest are like, there's some that are decent. The others are like, but I learned something from it. And that's where I'm at. Right. And that's part of the journey. It's not like, okay, just rush to sell all your pots. Just start. That's not the point. The point is to make great pots, and it takes time, and it takes a long time. It'd be my whole life figuring it out. I hope I'll never get there, but I'll reach a level that I can start
You're at least
selling and
happy with,
putting,
yeah,
then I can
yeah.
have people using my pots. But until then, I appreciate all the support and encouragement, and I will keep sharing my journey. And I hope people get something from it. If anybody out there is getting into pots or making bonsai pots, just ceramics as a whole, I'd love to be a resource for anybody. I'm always super happy to help people answer questions, pass on what I've learned recently or in the past, figure out, share my challenges, tell them what I'm going to try to do about it, learn from them. If you are making pots, if you're struggling with it, doesn't even matter if it's bonsai pots or not, hit me up on my Instagram, DM me, and let's figure it out.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, yeah. Just explicitly spelling it out. How can folks reach out to you? Like, what's the best place to connect
Yeah,
and
go to
watch your work and your journey?
yeah, Instagram. It's Josheramics. That's my name, Josh, with ceramics, like ceramics, but without the C. The first C, the second C is still there. And it's just Josheramics. This is a name I came up with in two seconds many years ago when I created my account, and it just kind of stuck, I guess. It's probably, I'll come up with a better brand when I'm like starting to get ready to sell and actually do all that. But for now, it's just Josh Ceramics. So you can go there, follow me, DM me. I'll add a contact form to my website too, josheramics.com, so people can get in touch. And yeah, come out to LA. I try to go to a lot of the clubs here. And yeah, I'd love to hear from you. Check out my videos and ask me questions. What is in the video is only a tiny, tiny fraction of the actual process. You don't get to hear me muttering to myself and swearing a lot. And yeah, so hit me up, DM me, Instagram, Josh Ceramics. I'll add a contact form. That's probably the best way.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking
Thank
the time
you.
today. This has been really, really informative.
It's amazing.
And
And
I think
shout out
there's a
to
lot
you,
of
Addison.
relatable.
Addison, I just wanted, sorry to interject, but like, you're doing
That's
great
okay.
work. I love your podcast. I like a lot of them. I mean, I listen to all of them out there, I think. And it's not to take away from any of them, but like your interview style, what you're doing, the consistency that you do it, the voices you have on, both like at the level of like Jonas and Ryan and others, and then little nobodies like me and everybody in between. I think it's just, you're doing great work, and this is the podcast and other resources out there, or the discourse around it, is really what is facilitating bonsai reaching the next level in the United States. And I'm so honored to be a part of this episode, and I hope I get to meet you in person and do it again. So thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. For sure, for sure. Yeah, it's fun to do.
Great.
And I agree that I think hopefully it plays a small part in providing a location for discourse that helps us kind of like sort through our differences and different
Sure.
approaches, and then also just drive us all to
It
continue
is.
pouring this passion into
It's
bonsai.
a
So
big part of it, man. It's a big part of it. I think it's so cool that people are disagreeing with each other and debating about this like super obscure thing, and they have these strong passions, but it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
there's no love lost, and it can be respectful and constructive. It's really like, in a way, an example of how people can disagree. And I just love that everybody's like super passionate about this crazy little weird thing that we do. So anyway, again,
Totally,
thank you.
totally, of course. Alrighty, well, hope everybody has a good rest of their day, rest of their evening, whatever it is for you listening. And yeah, we'll be talking more about ceramics in the future.
Great. Thanks, Addison.